Welcome back, everyone, to another episode on Shade Studios. If you are brand new to the channel, welcome in. Be sure to hit that subscribe down below if you're not already subscribed to our channel, and give this video a thumbs up at the end if you enjoy it. Today is going to be a brand new video focused on all of the films that I watch for the week. Hoping to do this every other week or so to update you on what I'm watching every single week, and also what are some of my top picks that I would recommend you either go to the theaters to watch, or even some films that you can watch in the comfort of your own home. So definitely I watched a couple of maybe some of my favorite potential films that I hope pick up more continued awards for this year. But one of the best animations I think that definitely hands down deserved a Golden Globe Award would be Flow. So when I watched the Golden Globes, I realized the only film on that list that I had not seen yet was Flow. And a prime reason as to why I hadn't seen Flow yet, honestly, is no theater really here in New York was offering it via AMC. There was one theater, Kips Bay, and it was at one time, and literally I was not able to go at that allotted time frame. But I guess all you have to do is win a Golden Globe, and voila, it opens up the doors to more opportunities to see the film in more theaters. It's kind of sad, honestly, when I think about it, because such a low budget film like Flow, which is actually a Latvian animation, kind of interesting, but really cool to know that a low budget film like this, which was under $5 million to create, just story-wise from start to finish was so well done. It's very rare, by the way, that you see any animations where there are no voice actors. And one of the parts that I loved about Flow is honestly there are absolutely no voice actors involved. Sometimes when I'm watching animated films, if it is a heavy A-lister's voice who you can kind of know right off the bat is speaking as one of the characters, I feel like that can really take away from the plot line. And with Flow, you are left with really listening to the actual sounds of what these animals represent in real life. Flow revolves around a black cat and other different animals that become basically almost like a family unit with the black cat. At the start of the film, you are taken into this beautiful forest. You see massive cat sculptures everywhere, a home that the black cat goes into, and there are wooden carvings of cats everywhere. It kind of made me think, are these cat worshippers that are in this forest that live here where this cat is owned by? But you actually, throughout the start to finish of the film, do not see any humans whatsoever, just almost remnants of humans. But the storyline revolves around basically a tsunami that kind of takes control of this beautiful forest the black cat is in. And the black cat was seen running away from a pack of dogs, scared for the cat's life. And what's interesting is the alliances that are kind of formed after this tremendous, impactful tsunami happens. The cat is forced into a wooden boat, and that boat is actually has one occupant, which is a beaver. And of course, the black cat is afraid, not sure whether or not the cat will be okay with this beaver, but ends up being a good kind of, I guess, boat mate. Then as the film kind of ventures along the way, one of the kind of main characters was this golden lab, and that was kind of an unlikely best friend to this cat, because at first I think the black cat thought that this dog was initially going to actually probably eat it. But the lab actually has this connection with the cat and really befriends the cat, and boards this boat as well, with also a lemur, which is also a very interesting kind of combination with this crew. And then I had to look this up actually because I wasn't sure what kind of bird actually was in this film, but it was the secretary bird, which is a bird from Africa, and it actually preys on larger animals like cats. So another unlikely pairing to go with the mix. But anyways, just a really cool storyline of how these animals kind of come together and they're able to survive and have this unlikely friendship. I also don't know how these animals honestly knew how to steer this boat. The pack of dogs were able to steer a boat, and then of course the cat could steer very well, and that bird could steer very well, as well as the beaver. All of them somehow knew how to manage and really navigate this boat in all ways. So I guess in flow, the animals just have a different IQ level, which was really cute. But again, just no talking whatsoever, which is very rare to see on a film. But you really got the storyline, and it really was captivating from start to finish. And I loved how kind of raw that film looked as well. It was almost like a painting that wasn't perfect. But highly, highly recommend Flow. It was absolutely incredible. And I think for 2024, that may have actually been my favorite animation. And I really do hope that it wins more awards this year. And that actually premiered at Cannes in 2024 as well. Next up, my second favorite film that I watched this past week was The Last Showgirl, starring Pamela Anderson, who was also nominated for a Golden Globe recently, and news actually just came out that she was nominated for a SAG award as well, which after seeing this film, it is much respected. I just was blown away by Pamela Anderson's acting in this film. As most of you know, Pamela Anderson became very famous through Baywatch, which unfortunately can really put you, I feel like, in a cornered position where not a lot of roles like this will come about. I was actually reading a little bit of a storyline of Gia Coppola and how she actually tried to get this script over to Anderson, and she sent it over to her, I guess, agent at the time, who basically said no within the hour and didn't even tell Anderson. So Coppola actually had to go through Anderson's mutual friends to get through her son Brandon, who then had to give the script to Anderson, and Anderson was like blown away by it, saying, you know, normally girls like me who make their living in their bathing suits don't have a lot of scripts that come across her in that way. And the role of Shelley just really hit her, and I can't even imagine anyone else playing that role of Shelley. So the plot line of this is, of course, as you can see in the title, The Last Showgirl. It is about Shelley as the main character, who has been a showgirl for over 30 years, and unfortunately the stage manager tells her and some of the other showgirls that the show in 2 weeks is going to be coming to an end. Dave Bautista is the one who portrays Eddie, who is that manager who's kind of facilitating this whole sadness of the show coming to an end and how it's going to go to this kind of neo-burlesque circus show that has been pulling in a bigger crowd, more ticket sales, and the La Razzle Dazzle, which is the show that they're in, is just not pulling in very many ticket sales anymore, which is showcasing in Shelley's paychecks. But this is kind of like this big eye-opener for her as to like, what am I going to do with my life? Where am I going to go from here? And it starts really peeling out these different layers of Shelley, which you start to see. And Jamie Lee Curtis jumped on the project because she heard that Anderson was going to be a part of it. And wow, what can I say? There is a dance scene in this film that is so entertaining to watch. I can't get it out of my head, honestly. Like, Jamie Lee Curtis really just nailed it. I actually just saw something, I feel like, with Jimmy Fallon and her doing a dance off as well. But man, Jamie Lee Curtis has some moves. And she plays kind of this deadbeat best friend of Shelley's. Her name is Annette, and she's a cocktail waitress. But just really fun to see her and Pamela Anderson interact. We had some other key characters in there. Jason Schwartzman plays a tiny little part in the end as just a director for a show that Shelley ends up trying to go out to audition for. And of course, he gives her kind of the hard truth, kind of the reality of what Shelley doesn't want to actually like see as true, which is, you know, she's a lot older and she's been in the game for a very long time, and she's kind of aged out of this new modernized dancing form, which these directors are looking for. And she thinks she has it, but, you know, Jason Schwartzman's like, you really don't. It looks like you know, were beautiful at one point for the razzle dazzle, but like not anymore. And some supporting characters around Shelley, which is kind of cool, as you see that she is friends with younger showgirls. And Brenda Song plays one of Shelley's closest showgirl friends, Mary Ann, who kind of helps her get ready and gets her out there so that she can make the set list on time. And then we've got Kiernan Shipka, who most of you may have known was Sabrina, the newest Sabrina. She plays Jody again, which is like this kind of younger girl who looks up to Shelley like her mom and looks to her for advice. But through all of this debacle of the show coming to a close in 2 weeks, Shelley decides to kind of reach out to her estranged daughter, and her daughter's played by Billie Lourd, who really is kind of uncertain about really letting Shelley back into her life. And her name is Hannah in this film, of course, but one of the dynamics is that Shelley just wasn't the best mom and kind of chose the razzle dazzle as like what she wanted to do in life, and chose that over motherhood, in a sense, raising Hannah as a single mom. And the storyline really just kind of goes and adapts to that relationship and that dynamic, and how it kind of pulls and tears at Shelley's heart, and also just really is disruptive towards Hannah as her child. So really just love the fact that this was also shot on film. It has this very aged effect, and it comes across in such a nice raw and edgy element, but there's nothing so flashy or fancy about this film, which I absolutely loved. It was shot in 18 days, which is kind of crazy to think about. And they shot this film for under $2 million, which is also crazy. I really feel like 2024 is the year of the low budget films. I feel like last year we just had some golden pieces that were released, and this is definitely one of them. Pamela Anderson, I really truly hope that you're able to take home an award this year. I think that you really filled the profile of what Shelley represents as a character, and it was just really cool to see that you can be more than just the Baywatch model. Out of the films that I watch is September 5th. So for those of you who are familiar with what happened during the Munich Olympics back in 1972, this is a film that encompasses that entire setting. And so Steven Spielberg actually created already a film kind of on the same exact storyline, but just from a completely different perspective. And this was a very tragic event. I was not alive when this happened, but I can't even imagine what it must have felt like to be a part of this. And this whole entire film is set with the ABC Sports broadcasting team, and kind of showcases it through their eyes of this whole event that revolved around a terrorism situation where Israeli Olympic athletes were held captive, and the news team for ABC's department was actually not there to cover this. So we had some pretty big characters that were played and depicted in this film. One of them was Peter Sarsgaard, who basically is a key figure in this film. He plays Rune Arledge, who is the ABC or president of ABC Sports, and he basically goes to his team when they're debating whether or not to kind of capture this catastrophic event live or not. And he says, you know, we're not giving this to news. We're taking this. ABC Sports is going with it. We're running with it. We're taking this, and we're going live. And then you've got some other key players in the mix. We've got Leonie Beniche, who, for those of you who've seen The Teacher's Lounge, she was incredible in that, but she depicts Marianne Gebhardt, who is a translator and is able to translate for the team in German and Hebrew. Really making everything honestly possible. She's kind of the only main female character in this adaptation where she's really just kind of the communicator and really piecing everything together. Then we have John Magaro, who plays Joffrey Mason, head of the control room in Munich. So he's really kind of the chess player, I feel like, in this film. And I think just he has a great just chemistry with Marianne's character, in a sense where he's just manning the table and the communication and really just making things run organically. In the Q&A after this film is really interesting. He actually spent a lot of time really learning what it's like to be in a control room, and I feel like on screen he really displayed that to perfection. I really felt like I was there with him. And of course, they had the real footage instead of green screens or blue screens. They were actually looking at their own footage that they had created for the film itself, which I think is really cool. Definitely an extra layer of work to have to do it that way, but I feel like it would make it more realistic from the actor's perspective. Then we have Ben Chaplin, who plays Marvin Badar, who's the head of ABC Sports. It's really just fun, honestly, watching the dynamic between Ben, John, and Peter, and just how their characters really are interacting, and sometimes they're disagreeing with one another, and sometimes it's just one of them has to pull the strings or pull the shots and just make a decision. But I do feel like their character dynamics really just were fun to kind of watch throughout the film. So this was actually nominated as well for a Golden Globe. For Best Motion Picture. It did not take home a Golden Globe. It did have some heavy hitters in that category, but hey, maybe they'll get nominated once again for something else this year. All right, so the last film that I watched originally premiered at TIFF back in 2023, finally got picked up and was released in 2024, and that film is Lee. So Kate Winslet, I feel like, is just having some incredible projects knocking at her door, and Lee was just the perfect adaptation for her to take on this character of Lee Miller. Lee Miller was a real life model at one point who then transitioned into becoming a photographer for British Vogue. And this storyline is just really cool. I feel like Lee's story and her personality was just really portrayed quite nicely by Kate Winslet. As far as the time period goes, it kind of gave me a bit of Saving Private Ryan with a little bit of other films that depict war, but Lee Miller definitely, I never really learned about in my history books. I think I may have came across her name in a photography class, but really just kind of cool how the plot line is spun out. So it's basically Kate Winslet or Lee being interviewed by a journalist, and through that journalist and her, she's kind of telling her life story through her photographs. And that's just kind of how the plot is pictured and portrayed, which is very interesting. But Lee really kind of was a spectacular force to be reckoned with. She ends up moving in with her boyfriend in London during World War II and wants to get a job at Vogue. Not too many people are excited about her trying to join in at Vogue, but an editor does kind of vouch for her, so she's able to get a job as a fashion photographer. And then as the war is happening, she actually pitches the idea to become a war photographer for Vogue, and of course, UK was not too excited about her enlisting in the war and being on the front lines, so she actually went through as being an American citizen to have access to that. So she enlists and ends up being a war correspondent. And one of the cool things is some of the photography that she kind of started out doing was on a campsite where there were just nurses and doctors really helping all of the wounded victims. So she kind of took portraits of nurses and, of course, just kind of the real life setting of what was happening to some of those soldiers that were on the battlefield. And unfortunately, as a woman, she just wasn't allowed the same abilities as other men in the press who were war correspondents as well. But eventually she gets an opportunity to head off to be just firsthand out there. And so her boyfriend, played by Alexander Skarsgård, Roland Penrose, was basically her curator and painter. He was also doing some things with camouflaging items to help in the war efforts, and was a little bit distraught at the fact that Lee was going to be on the front lines basically, and her life was definitely going to be endangered. But moving forward, we've got Andy Samberg from SNL, who plays the photographer or photojournalist of Lifetime magazine. And he's kind of the main side character to Lee in a sense where they pretty much do everything together. And they journey through the German territory and really uncover some incredible moments while they're on this journey, just going on a Jeep. And through that journey, I mean, they are capturing some crazy things at these concentration camps, images that haven't been seen by the rest of the world yet. Winslet, as her character portrayed by Lee Miller, was able to capture, surprisingly, the first time napalm was used. And one of the things that was interesting was they did at the end of the film a side-by-side picture of Kate Winslet and the actual Lee Miller, but they were almost spot-on identical. Lee Miller actually ends up, after Hitler has been captured, takes a photo in his apartment and has a photograph in the back of a bathtub. So she's in the bathtub nude, and Andy Samberg ends up kind of capturing that moment of her in the tub nude. And it was just a really, really cool artistic art form, but again, very ballsy to be able to do something like that. But overall, Lee was just a great kind of historical film, and really just allowed me to understand the richness of Lee Miller's history and background. I think that the cinematography was very well done. It came out beautiful texture wise, and just really cool, again, just to learn about the history of a woman who honestly during her time wasn't able to get her photos initially published in British Vogue because they were afraid that it was going to be too traumatic for others to see, so it was only published in Vogue in the US. But her photography actually didn't become known until her son actually came across her photographs and ended up kind of publicizing them. All right, everyone. So those are the films that I watched for this week. I really hope you take the time to maybe go see one or two of these. I think that they're all great options for different reasons. But again, my two favorite picks, I think, for the week, hands down, has to go to The Last Showgirl and Flow. All right, everyone. Thanks again for tuning in. Be sure to hit that subscribe down below again if you haven't already subscribed, and give this video a like. We'll catch you on the next video.